Welcome to the September edition of Northeast Journal. I'm your host, Joe Cullen. Coming up in the next half hour, we'll visit a new school in Lake Elmo. We'll get a preview of the White Bear Township Day event, and we'll go swimming in Oakdale. All that and more is straight ahead on Northeast Journal. Hello everyone and welcome to the September edition of Northeast Journal. I'm your host Joe Cullen. Every month on Northeast Journal we give you an inside look at the people and places that make up the northeast section of the Twin Cities. Complete beauty. That's the meaning behind a new school in Lake Elmo. Here's a closer look at the Pankalo Education Center. Students with special needs have a brand new school to look forward to going to in the Northeast Metro. This fall, the Pankalo Education Center in Lake Elmo will open its doors.
Pankalo is a K-8 facility in District 916, and we serve students with developmental cognitive delays, students with emotional behavioral disorders, and students on the autism spectrum. The capacity for our building is 130 students, and we have a neighborhood set up, so students are divided into 4 neighborhoods, so each neighborhood has 5 classrooms, and then students are grouped into neighborhoods based on their needs and age. Each classroom will have about 5 to 7 students based on students' needs, age, those types of things. And we have an integrated arts theme here at Pankalo, so students will get art every day, which we're really excited about, and then we'll be integrating art into their academic areas as well.
The Pankalo Education Center is part of the Northeast Metro 916 Intermediate School District, which serves 14 member school districts that refer students who need help outside of a traditional setting. Superintendent Connie Hayes tells us what the word Pankalo means.
Yes, Pankalo is actually a new word that we designed. It is made up of 2 Greek words, pan and kalo, and when you put them together it means complete beauty. And that really helps us represent the kind of function that we're going to have around our curriculum with an arts theme, and really help the students express themselves through art, which they might not have had experience to do before.
Even the playground at Pankalo has a state-of-the-art design.
We love our playground. We have 2 locations. One is a typically designed playground, except the great thing is the playground equipment. Most of it's designed around some music themes to kind of stay with the theme of the building. The other separate playground has great features as well, but what we designed there is a surface that is something that is helpful for students who want to pick up materials to eat, and that's unhealthy. So the surface looks more like one of those cushy gym floors that you might see, and lots of fun equipment around there too.
Pankalo Education Center Principal Amy Johncox tells us more about what makes her school so great for her students.
We have our own identity. We have several design features designed specifically for our students in mind, so taking into account light, sound. Every single student space in this building has natural light. That was very intentional, and we were able to do that. The lighting in classrooms is not fluorescent because that can be an issue for a lot of our students. Sound, so when you're in classrooms, you don't hear things that are happening out in hallways. If kids need to take a break, those areas are very quiet so that other students aren't hearing students who might be having a hard or difficult time. So students who are engaged in the academics aren't being distracted by students who might not be engaged in their academics. We have lots of specialized things for our students. So there's breakout spaces within the classrooms. There's different types of breakout spaces within their neighborhoods. So there's breakout spaces with different light and music choices for the students. There's breakout spaces with swings if they choose that. And then there's just breakout spaces with like comfy seating where they might take a break or they might do an academic task.
Classes started at Pankalo in early September. To learn more about Pankalo and the 916 district, visit their website at 916schools.org. In just a few minutes, I'll be joined in the studio by Deb Stender, who is the event director for White Bear Township Day. She's also the director of Marketfest in downtown White Bear Lake. Producer Mary Klein and a couple of our videographers gave us a look at Safety Night at Marketfest.
First time we've been here, and I've been begging him to come for a while, and I think it was either you or Kurt that got
Kurt and Dale. Welcome to Marketfest. We're so glad you guys came. Hey, give me a high five, bud. Are you having fun? Yeah. Are you having fun at the bouncy house?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm now joined by Deb Stender, who is the event director for White Bear Township Day, which takes place on Saturday, September 9th at Polar Lakes Park. Deb, I want to thank you so much for coming back to Northeast Journal again. I know you're a familiar face. We usually have you on a couple times a year, usually kind of early in the summer to talk about Marketfest. And now that we're getting close to beginning of September here, we're talking about White Bear Township Day. And for those who maybe aren't familiar with it, can you tell us what White Bear Township Day is?
Great, sure. Thanks, Joe, for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's right around the corner again. And White Bear Township Day is a day-long event. It starts at 2 o'clock, and as you said, Polar Lakes Park. And it concludes at 8 p.m. with a fabulous fireworks display. But throughout the day, there's many activities, live entertainment throughout the day, a lot of inflatables for our young ones, a petting zoo, a couple of new things this year. We have a beanbag tournament, and that's for all ages, and we'd encourage people to sign up for that. There's cash prizes involved, so kind of a neat new piece of the event, as well as a large, what we're calling touch-a-truck, and a large sandbox. So the Public Works Department has been wonderful, and they have a few new items they'd like to show off, but it also gives the community an opportunity to see these things, get close to them. Also with Ramsey County Sheriff's Department too, we'll have a large display of their squad cars and things that, again, the community can get up close and personal with. Lots of vendors, lots of food, all kinds of, like I said, activities throughout the day.
Seems like, you know, with the things you're describing, it's really something for people of all ages, things for the really little ones in the family up till through all the adults and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm happy to say too that we also have knocker ball, that if people aren't familiar with it, I kind of describe it as the large human hamster balls where people can play in the soccer fields and kind of run into each other, but do some pretty neat things without getting hurt. So that's kind of a neat feature, I think, to this event as well. The park lends itself so well to some of these larger type of activities.
And of course, there's great music and other entertainment going on throughout the day as well.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you that starting off the day, we have the Alphabets Band, again, for kind of our littler people in the community, a really fun band. It's really interactive. It gets the kids moving and dancing and singing and doing things, and that'll kick off our day. Then we have a number of community performers that will be performing kind of in our, what I'm calling our middle time. We've got the White Bear Lake Area Elementary Orchestra will be performing, which is kind of neat, and they're a little bit of a newer group, so it's fun to see them, along with the White Bear Lake Drumline, which is a huge hit, and they're so good to watch. And then we've also got some fun things. Lakeshore Players will be performing and showing off some of their talents, as well as we have a gentleman, Mr. Joey Flip, that will be doing harmonica lessons, and anybody that partakes in that gets a free harmonica.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really excited about our headline band this year. It's Maiden Dixie. They're a nationally touring band. They're really good. I really anticipate that being just a fabulous performance.
So a lot of people might even, be first timers coming out because they want to see them, and then get to see, oh wow, this is a really fun event, and then hopefully come back for years to come.
Absolutely, that's certainly our goal.
And imagine, it's just, especially the timing of it. It's, you got a lot of things going on throughout the summer, but it's kind of a nice way, school's just starting everything, but for people to still kind of, celebrate those kind of last remaining days of summer as we go into fall.
I definitely feel like it's kind of one of those last, end of summer, beginning of fall events.
And I would imagine that, a lot of work goes into this. This isn't something that you can just throw together at the last minute. So, you're probably planning, kind of like you do for Marketfest and other events. I'm sure there's a lot of planning that goes
Absolutely. It's a year-round planning, and White Bear Township has a very active park board, and they're very instrumental in helping with this event, along with the rest of the township board and Public Works. But again, if anything, the event, of course, is really neat and a lot of activities, but Polar Lakes Park is an absolutely beautiful venue, and I just encourage people to stop by, even just to see the park. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. And, there's, nice little playground there. And, you get to see all the different amenities that the park has to offer that you can use any other time of the year, the soccer field, softball, all that stuff.
Absolutely. And the amphitheater that's built into the park is just perfect for any of the live entertainment. It's just bring a blanket, bring a chair, and you have perfect seating there.
Now, are you in need of any help for the day? Is there any need for volunteers or anything like that?
Would absolutely love it. Always can use extra hands in anything, parking, helping direct people. There's quite a few jobs. So yes, thank you for asking. If anybody's interested, please contact the township office and we will get in touch with you.
It seems like from other years that I've gone to it, it seems like things usually run real smooth, like you said, whether it's finding a parking spot or if you're just trying to find your way around. And nice thing is there's plenty to do, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like going to the state fair or something. It's, everything's just right there, but you still feel spread out and can have fun. You can relax, you can eat and listen to music and play games, and it's kind of a little something for everyone.
It really is. Just as I said, the park really lends itself well for this event.
Great. All right. Anything else you care to add to our viewers to encourage them to come out and enjoy White Bear Township Day?
Well, I think too, as I said, it's one of those kind of last big events before we get into fall and winter and start those types of events. But I just really encourage people to come out. It's a beautiful day. It's a lot of fun, and you'll see a lot of your neighbors and community members.
And again, that's Saturday, September 9th.
Correct.
At Polar Lakes Park in White Bear Township. And maybe for those who aren't familiar, can you explain kind of where that's located?
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of in an interesting area, but I think of it kind of in between 35E, 96, and White Bear Parkway. It's nestled back by the township offices and Public Works. And it is fairly easy to get to, and of course we'll have signs out every place to direct people there and for parking as well. And it is free admission and free parking.
Perfect. Can't ask for more than that, and we'll just hope for some beautiful weather, which seems like most years are usually blessed with a perfect day.
We have been very lucky.
So yeah, we'll hope for great weather, and we know it'll be a great time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Deb, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again next year to preview some more events.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks a lot. Several months ago, Oakdale author George Schire was on the show to talk about his books about professional wrestling. He has another new book and returns today to talk about it. George, I want to thank you so much for joining me again here on Northeast Journal.
Always a pleasure to talk wrestling.
I know we had such a blast last time, and we knew you had another book coming out, which actually I believe came out the end of May.
It did.
So hopefully people this summer have had a chance to pick it up, and I should mention we have it right here. It's the AWA record book for the 1970s, Part 2.
Very correct. I had Part 1 come out about a year and a half ago, and the 70s was a time when wrestling really started to take off for Vern Gagne and the AWA territory. And so what these books do is they chronicle all of the results from all of the cities that the AWA promoted in. And it really gives a chance to, if you were a fan of the Crusher, you can follow the Crusher in every match, in every town that he worked in, who his opponents were, who he was feuding with, when he lost, when he won, when he was disqualified, when he was in the dreaded cage match, the reason he lost and the reason he picked a partner for the next match. And they really tell a story as you go along. And the other thing I did along with putting the results in there was a lot of pictures of different wrestlers. And I put trivia notes and things that they didn't always tell you behind the scenes. And sometimes I'll tell you when a wrestler worked in a different territory, if it was under a different name, or well, he was a good guy there, but he's a bad guy here. So they're a lot of fun to do, Joe.
I bet it must take an awful lot of time. And how are you, I had looked through this before the interview. Yeah, you just have, tons of cities and dates with the results. Where are you getting all this information from?
Well, I was fortunate back when I was a kid. I started collecting all the wrestling programs from the different territories. And it affords me now the ability to go back into any territory I want. Fortunately, these are just doing AWA work because that's more local and it's where my heart was, as I was a fan of the AWA. But I can pretty much tell you every wrestler's results from any territory and what he did before he came here and what he did after he left here. And they tell stories. It's so much fun.
And I imagine the wrestlers themselves, have you gotten any feedback from them? It must be fun for them to even be able to look back. They're probably reading about matches that maybe they haven't thought about in years.
Well, Larry Hennig especially appreciated it. He told me, he says, you remember things I forgot. And he doesn't remember. He said, Nick Bockwinkel one time said, we just went to the matches every night. We worked, we went home. It was our job. And now it's fun for them to look back. And of course, it brings back memories for them too, because all of these guys were good friends. They were co-workers. And even though on camera or in the ring for the storyline, they may have hated each other or had a battle for supremacy, whatever it might have been. But outside the ring, they were good buddies. And now, in the later years, we've lost so many of the great wrestlers. And they enjoy going back and looking, and wow, I don't even remember we did that. And they'll look at an angle that happened or a storyline. And Larry Hennig really appreciated it. Jim Brunzell loves it. Greg Gagne enjoyed it. He just always says, I don't know how you do this stuff. But it's just a lot of fun. And so I have no life since I retired from the bank, so I enjoy doing this.
Well, imagine what a great resource it is, because, the kind of current wrestling, say the last decade or so, so much of that, you can find all of it on the internet, either the results or go to YouTube, you can probably find the videos. But this stuff, you're not going to, otherwise before this, have been able to figure out what happened in a match in the early 70s in Winnipeg or something.
The one thing that I do always tell people, though, we have the internet today, and it is a lot easier today where you can just Google something and you might get a page or a site or several sites. The one thing you have to do, there are a lot of title histories out there on the internet, and I can tell you there's a lot of them that are wrong. Or not exactly accurate. Not all wrong, but there's inaccuracies in it. And that's the thing that really bugs me, because we're in a society today where you believe what you read on the internet. And the old story, not everything's true on the internet. And it is fact, it isn't. With what I have here is I have all these programs. I have all the results. I have all the newspaper clippings. I can go back and I can say, okay, this is how it happened. And though they may have told you this or this happened, here's really what happened. I told you a story briefly off camera before we went on about Vern Gagne. In 1963, the Crusher was still a bad guy here in the AWA. And he won the AWA title from Vern Gagne. Well, Vern took a little vacation down to Texas, Lubbock and Amarillo, and he did some wrestling. When he was down there, he was billed as the AWA World Champion. But at the time he was doing that, he was not the champ. But fans in Lubbock and Amarillo, though they saw the world champion, the fact is he wasn't. Crusher was up here. In fact, Crusher defended the title. I believe it was in was in a small town in Iowa. Crusher actually defended the title on the same day that Vern was down there defending the title. So stuff like that is interesting. And unless you get into this type of thing, you'd never know that.
So you were also mentioning to me, just chatting with you before the interview, you do other interviews and you've done some at the state fair every year for different radio stations, things like that, and that someone was mentioning that they can never stump you. Did you ever find, do people ever have questions for you that you don't know or you have to go look up or give you a fact that was something you weren't aware of? Or do you pretty much kind of know it all by now?
Well, honestly, I have never been stumped. If they're asking me about the AWA, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be an expert on it. There have been times when I've had to say, I do need to check on that to be factual. But pretty much it's either in my head or I can easily access it. And my wife gets a kick out of me because I'll be at the computer working and all of a sudden I'll see something and I'll run to my wrestling room and she'll hear the file cabinet open up and I'll come out with a folder and a file and I'll be putting down the facts. So I can go access it really quickly. I think my wrestling filing system is probably better than many corporations because that is something that I can go, if you ask me for a wrestler or a file or a note or a book or whatever it is, magazine, I can grab it within seconds. It's that easy. And I had a friend one time who, he had all this stuff, but he couldn't tell you where it was to save his life. I mean, if he wanted a particular program or whatever it was. And that's mind-boggling to me. But it's one thing to have it, but you have to be able to use it. And so that's what I do. I've got my filing system down to where you ask me a question, I can get you the answer.
So is this something you kind of developed on your own, or had you consulted with like other historians for, either other sports or other things, or is this something kind of through trial and error you learned on your own?
I think it was my own, Joe. When I was a kid growing up, I remember in those days, I'd cut pictures out of the magazines. And this was in the crude days of the mid-'60s, early '60s. And I'd actually put them on my wall, favorite wrestlers or whatever. And I think that's a normal thing for a kid. As I got older and I started traveling around to the different territories, I remember one time I went into Houston, Texas for some wrestling cards, and Paul Bosch, the promoter, had a chance to go into his office and talk with him. Well, when I walked in Paul's office, I was like, my jaw dropped. He had ceiling to floor, wall-to-wall plaques, photos, awards, things on his wrestling office wall. And I think that's where I got it. I said, you know what, I have to have a room like this. This is the way to do it. So I do have a wrestling room like that. Ceiling to floor, wall to wall, with posters and pictures and different things, memorabilia, plus my own filing system. And I remember Paul Bosch, he'd have a file cabinet with all the results or cards that he had promoted in Houston. And Houston was a promotion that ran 300, every Friday night, every night of the year, with the exception of Christmas Day, if it fell on Christmas Day that Friday. But he'd have a card the following week. So he basically ran 52 cards a year. They had good television down there. And I have every program from every card from 1953 up to the end in 1988 when they no longer made that particular program. It's a lot of programs. So in that instance, I can go back and you can ask me anything about Texas Houston wrestling, and I can give you the answer. And the same for Dallas and Fort Worth. And so I started collecting all these programs, and I guess it became an obsession and a fun life. And I teased you earlier, in my real life, back when I was working, I worked in a bank. And I was a loan officer, I was a manager, I was a vice president. All of that was fun, and I enjoyed it. But this was what I was secretly doing in my head and my work. And now that I'm retired, I can do all of this. I just got in the mail a finished copy of Mad Dog Vachon's book. I was very honored because the author, Mad Dog, passed away coming up on 2 years ago in this coming November. And he would have been proud of this book. The authors had contacted me back in April and wanted me to read an advance copy of the book, which I did. I actually corrected some things for him, offered some information for him, and I got the finished copy yesterday, and I told my wife, I said, now this is something I've never had happen. On the back of the book, I'm one of the guys giving a review for the book. Oh. I've never had that happen. So that was interesting, but then there's stuff in the book that I'm included in. And I've researched for so many authors, you know, people that call up and say, can you give me some information, even if it's just photos. I'm really excited when I can do that. And this is the most fun thing I do every single day. And I tell people there's not one day that goes by that I'm not doing something wrestling related as far as research or just even for my own satisfaction. Sometimes I'll just get a bug and say, you know, I wonder how so-and-so did in that territory, and I'll go look it up and I'll chronicle it. So I got everything chronicled as far as results and wrestler histories, result histories of territories. That's what's really fun.
Well, awesome. Just so impressed with these books, and unfortunately we're out of time, but if people want to get these, where can they find them?
These are available at Amazon.com, and I also would remind you that I have the 60s book also there, 60s results, and my Minnesota's Golden Age of Wrestling, the original one, is available on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble. You can get that book, or any bookstore you can order it.
I understand you got some other books in the work, the 80s and some other projects
I have
you're
the
working
80s
on.
I'm working on, and I'm also working on a very special tag team history book, and so far that's been the most fun for me. I'm just invigorated by it.
All right, well, so hopefully sooner rather than later we'll have you back on to
talk
promote
wrestling.
Another book. Yeah, definitely.
There you go.
And we look forward to it. Wish you the best of luck with your new book, and hope to see you again soon with another one.
Thank you, Joe.
And new generations of swimmers are learning how to stay afloat at a new business in Oakdale. Here's a look at the Goldfish Swim School.
We are a premier provider of water safety and learn to swim education for children aged 4 months to 12 years. We also provide a curriculum that was custom developed by our founder that prepares them for not just ongoing stroke development, but also potential future recreational or competitive swimming. We also like the demographics and the personality of Oakdale and the neighboring communities. We think it's just a great fit for what we bring to the community and what their expectations are in terms of quality of service. It's just a great fit. We're super happy with the location, and it's working out really well so far. The city of Oakdale was remarkably wonderful. They've got a great team of folks there that were supportive, extremely professional. Any big construction project or a tenant improvement build-out like this is a little bit complex, and there's always challenges, and whenever we encountered something like that, the staff at the city of Oakdale was not just professional, but genuinely interested in helping us get to where we are today. We take a lot of pleasure in having the privilege of teaching young people how to swim and watching them progress. In the short time that we've been open, we've already had a few students progress to the next level, and it's a joy and also an awesome responsibility, because this is something that's intensely important, that our young people know how to swim, they know how to be safe, and they make the right decisions when they're around water. Quite frankly, we feel privileged to be here and to be representing Goldfish Swim School.
That's all we have time for on this month's show. Thanks for tuning in, and join us again next month for another edition of Northeast Journal.